Despite my love of the Z80 and fondness for the 6502, there is one major limitation with both of these chips, and that is the 16-bit address bus. And being 16 bits, 2 to the power 16, unfortunately only allows it to address 64 kilobytes of memory. So in this video today we'll be discussing methods of expanding the memory beyond the 64 kilobyte limit. The first method that I have used is an MC14017, which is pin compatible for the 4017 decade counter, if you're familiar with that chip. And basically what I'm doing is I'm using the outputs to select an actual memory chip, regardless if it's a ROM or a RAM. And what I do is I have a couple of I/O ports set aside, and when you select one I/O port, it will increment the chip, which will move the counter to the next slot. And if you do the other I/O port, it will actually trigger the resets. So therefore, you can step through all 10 outputs of the 14017, or you can hit the reset to reset it. When the counter is actually in the 10th position and you increment it, it does actually go back to slot 1. So that's one way of doing it. So you can actually provide 10 select lines from the one chip. Okay, but unfortunately the outputs are active high, and the select pins on most RAM chips, probably nearly all RAM chips I've ever seen, are active low. So that's one problem, so we're going to need to invert them. Another issue is that we only want these select lines to be selected when that bank is being selected, because the way the circuit is, it will always be outputting while that chip is on. So in order to do this, we take each select line coming from the 14017, and then we feed we feed that select line to one of the inputs of an AND gate. Now the other input for the NAND gate, take the bank select line and we invert it, because we also need that to be active high. And then we feed both that and one of the outputs from the MC14017 into the NAND gate, and then it will do the two things. It will invert the output for us, and it will also gate it based on whether or not that bank is selected. Then all we do is we take the output of the NAND to a chip, and then we repeat this all the way down for all 10 outputs, and then that will allow us to select up to 10 memory chips. The bank select signal is actually generated on the CPU card, where I have a 74HCT139, and one of the gates on that chip will decode the A14 and A15 line and provide the 4 bank outputs. And you should see the previous videos for more information about that, and also on my website. The other method I have used is using a 74HCT573 octal latch as an extended bus register. And the way I do this is I attach this chip, so when you select an I/O port, you will then be allowed to write to the chip, and then the outputs of the chip will provide the extra address lines. And since we're using address lines A14 and 15 for bank decoding, as previously mentioned, those are not available to the memory. So we use this latch to provide address lines A14, 15, all the way up to A21, which in theory actually allows addressing of up to 4 megabytes, which is quite a lot for a Z80 system. Combining both methods allows you to access 40 megabytes of memory. The drawback for this, however, is the system still only sees a 16 kilobyte window for each bank. So what you have to do is you have to either first select the chip or load the extended bus register to point where that window is pointing, and then you can access that 16 kilobytes window as normal. Okay, now it's time for an actual demo of this thing working. As you can see in the top left, up there, is the output LEDs. It looks quite dim because I want the lights to actually show up nicely. And you can see on the left hand side is the outputs of the MC14017, and on the right side is the extended address bus. And so let's fire this on. There we go. Now, as you can see, it always starts up in a random state. You can correct for this in software. We can have it clear all that when we start. So what would happen is we would set an output command, and we would write to port 02, which in this case is the extended address bus, and we'll just zero that out. And I would also start by resetting the MC14017 1417 by outputting to port 1. Doesn't matter what byte you write, it will trigger it to reset. So there we go. So now it's in position 1. So let's have a look. Let's see what's available. And see, we'll dump what's there. That's the I got a non-volatile RAM in there at the moment. It's 128 kilobyte non-volatile RAM. I did have some 512 K1s and some other ones, but I kind of killed them. I had some latch up. So yeah. So anyway, that's the chunk 1, I suppose. And if we want to have a look at the next chunk, so we output to 00. Doesn't matter what we write. And you see we move to the next one. And let's read from the same address. And there we go. We got something different. And I only have those 2 chips on right now. So all the other ones would, I think so. Let's see what happens if we go somewhere that doesn't have anything. So as you can see, it's just garbage. So yeah. See, if we reset it back to the first point, then we dump, and then we look in the memory again. You can see that. It's simple as that. And so let's reset that. So now we're back at the first chip. Now, say we want to look at a slightly higher address than the 16K. Let's output support 2. Let's set the pin 14 as high. So there we go. That's A14 as far as the memory is concerned, not as far as the system is concerned. So let's dump memory from there. As you can see, there's nothing stored at that location. But I can write to that location. So 000, let's do 4D. So it's right there. And let's go back, look at that again. That's back to the beginning of the RAM. So let's go back to that location again. One. As you can see, we just selected back to it. So that's an example of that working. And you can expand the board on and keep adding on up to all 10 chips for this board. And it works quite well. I've been doing a lot of experimentation with it, and as you can see, it is working. and those are non-volatile RAMs on there, so it will store the information. But you could easily just do it with normal RAM, or stick a flash ROM on there, and you can still you'll be able to access the higher memory in those chips. Now, as for expanding beyond the 40 megabytes that this card will do, you can quite easily do that. The MC14017 datasheet actually shows you how to daisy chain the MC14017 chips, which I'll bring up here. This will allow you to expand. I think it adds 8 or 9 extra steps each time you do it. That'd be, that'd work quite well. You'd be able to have like 20 different chips you want to select. But the only downside is you have to send an I/O output to the port of it every time you want to select the next chip. So if you want to select like chip 25, you've got to send 25 out commands, and it could be fine, but it's a bit of a pain to do. If it's something you want to do, then that's perfectly fine. And you can also expand the size of the addressing by adding more of those 74HCT537 octal buffers. You can add more, and then you basically increase the extended address bus by an extra 8 bits for every chip you add. And now the downside with that is, for setting those additional 8 bits every time is an extra I/O command. But if it's something that's useful, then I'm sure the one command extra time will be worth it. But with all that in mind, you can expand the memory to some ridiculous sizes using these methods, which is quite crazy and can be quite useful. I hope this expansion video has provided some useful information, and if you want more information, please visit my website www.39k.ca, and you'll also find information about my M62 project, which this is part of, and also in there you can find the links to the current schematics, which I try and keep up to date. The schematics for the expansion card, this is on there, although there's extra features on here that are not in the schematic, like the LEDs. I try and keep them up to date as much as I can. Thank you for watching, and also I'd like to give a shout out to Zeddy, my Patreon, and if you are interested in supporting this channel in any way, please either go through my website. I do have a support page on there, and also please consider Patreon. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.